Necromunda, Orlocks, the House of Iron. In this video, I'm going to show you my new, old Orlock gang and how I painted them up. I'll be telling my story of how I got into it originally, my plans for the future, and reflecting on some associated rules and such from the first edition of Necromunda. My flirtation with Necromunda began in my early hobbying days. I had visited my local games workshop a couple of times, bought some paints and some Imperial Space Marines, and a White Dwarf magazine. As an aside, my local games workshop, or Warhammer store as it is now called, has been in the hobby news recently, which is another interesting story in its own right. Anyway, the White Dwarf magazine I bought was issue 190. And the cover was the same artwork as the Necromunda box set. The issue was mainly concerned with the release of Necromunda, as well as articles on, amongst other things, the Calidus Assassin for 40k, Slaanesh War Machines in Epic, and rules for Tyranid Warriors in Warhammer 40k. But none of these articles were the reason I bought this magazine. It came with a free miniature. And which impressionable youth can say no to such a generous offer? My kids these days love to buy magazines giving away plastic rubbish, so I guess it comes full circle. The miniature in question was one of these, a plastic Orlock armed with an autogun, if memory serves. A look inside this magazine reveals other miniatures were given away on the cover, and not just this sculpt. They could be Goliath as well as Orlock. I promptly primed my model with Skull White painted on, and then used a combination of Chaos Black, Skull White, Blood Red, and Ultramarines Blue to finish up the model. It wasn't my best paint job. In fact, it could have been one of my worst, but how was I to know any different? I was just happy to have a free miniature. But I didn't want a one-man gang, and Necromunda generally works on having several members in one's gang. What I'm trying to convey is, when my friend asked me to play Necromunda with him, I had to buy a gang. And being an unoriginal sort, I simply bought more Orlocks. Metal Orlocks, which came in this box. By this time, my painting had improved a bit, and I feel I did a decent job of them. Copying the box art, of course, along with the goblin green bases required for the underhives at the time. Now, we didn't play many games, and truth be told, I can't recall the detail of them at all. I'm pretty sure he had rat skins though. This story then takes a familiar turn. I went off the hobby, I found my stuff in storage some years later, I sold said stuff to fund other ventures, and that was the Great Cull of 2010, with these models being another casualty. At least I pocketed some money for them though. My biggest mistake was selling this box of Legion of the Damned. Naive young fool that I was, I only used the most basic postage service, and the buyer claimed they never received them, and I had no way to prove otherwise. So, they got a full refund. Now, it's entirely possible they didn't receive them at all, but I guess I will never know. All I knew was, I didn't get the 50 quid, and I didn't have those models anymore. Man, I wish I'd never sold them. Ah well, you live and learn. 14 years later, the position I am in is this. I want to regain all I lost in that cull, and the Orlocks are no exception. So a couple of months ago, I spent the big bucks on a metal Orlock gang from eBay. No box this time. But that doesn't bother me. The minis were the same kind as what I had in the 90s. Those and a bonus heavy bolter. I'm sure that will come in handy. The plan was to paint these up and play some games of old Necromunda again. At the time of writing, I've been teaching my son how to play, and we're planning a campaign. He playing Goliaths and me Orlocks. I'm pretty pumped for it, to be honest. But of course, if I am going to play, that's going to be with fully painted models. That's my personal non-negotiable when it comes to tabletop immersion. So let's have a look at these beauties. The set in question came with a leader, a heavy, 4 gangers, and 2 juves. There was therefore a representative of each type of gang fighter here. A gang needed a minimum of 3 members, one of which must be the leader. The set I'm looking at comes equipped as follows. A leader with a power axe and bolt gun. He has a holstered pistol as well. I suppose you could parley with your opponent about which it is beforehand, though it would be written on your roster anyway. There's a heavy with a heavy stubber, and if you look carefully on his backpack, he has a stub gun as well. There's a ganger with a las gun, and another with an auto gun. A ganger with a knife and auto pistol. A ganger with a shotgun, which is my favourite of these, by the way, since he looks like he's hiding around a corner ready to get the jump on someone. Finally, these two rather youthful-looking Juves, one with a knife and stub gun, and another with just an auto pistol. All fighters were assumed to have a knife, even if it wasn't visible on the model, tucked in their coat or underpants or somewhere. Before painting, there was some minimal cleanup to do. The metal was pretty soft, so it was trivial to clean the mould lines with my knife. Am I in the minority of people who do this, by the way? Most models I buy second-hand still have their mould lines, painted or not. Anyway, some models have the obligatory wormies, which are not a pain to remove but are sometimes hidden amongst other details. Gonna get the knife on you, son? I drill some barrels, bend the tab for a pressure fit in the base, and fill gaps in the base with milliput. A little beach sand later is sprinkled on the bases, glued on with Mod Podge, which I now prefer to PVA for this job. The paint job from one model to another is roughly the same, but the example I will be showing you is this sculpt with an auto pistol and knife. I began with a white prime. I suppose I could have done it black, but white was what I used in 1996, and it worked fine then. There's definitely an argument for starting with many different colours, but I chose black because I wanted those areas blocked in right away. This goes on the boots, weapons, and leather jacket, because all Orlocks, if they were honest with themselves, are fans of the musical Grease. They are also fans of denim jeans, so some Vallejo flat blue achieves that goal. From the look of his well-sculpted features, I pinned this chap down as a red vest kind of guy, so I mixed a little brown with some Mephiston red, and applied this to the vest, which was going to be the darkest colour you will see, with the intention of highlighting later. Orlock fashion is accessorised with these cloths tied around the waist, leg, and forehead, and sometimes around the arm. I painted these with a 50-50 mix of Vallejo tan earth and dark sand. Barbarian Flesh by Army Painter was applied to his, well, flesh, his arms, head, and neckline. Now he doesn't look great at this stage, but he'll get there. You just have to trust in your own perseverance. Back in the day I painted this with bronzed flesh, if you remember that colour from the Citadel range. And I just want to take a minute to address the brands and colours of paints that I use. They're not chosen because I think they are the best. I just use what I have. And I encourage you to experiment with what you have as well, whatever you are painting. Don't feel like you have to go and buy the exact same paints as what some YouTuber is using. Just have a go with what you've got and see what happens. At this stage, I decided to bring up the red a little by painting pure Mephiston red on most of the vest, except the recesses, i.e. where it meets the jacket and belt. Returning to the skin, I shaded this with Reichland Flesh Shade all over. Nothing special here, just a real dirty wash. And then I took some Skeleton Horde contrast and painted this into the folds of his cloth, which is the shading for these sections. Next, I let some gunmetal paint by Army Painter embark onto my brush, and I paint that onto the auto pistol, on certain parts of the jacket, namely the shoulder guards, the knife, belt buckle, and other jewellery. Necromunda the game is named after the Imperial planet from the Warhammer 40k universe. It's a hive world, a type of planet home to vast cities, often built into the sky and deep beneath the earth, kind of like a termite mound. Hive cities have many levels, but the game is mainly concerned with the Underhive, which is a lawless area where people gather into gangs for travelling, fighting, exploring, and other forms of tomfoolery. The sourcebook from Necromunda 1st edition has this paragraph to summarise the Underhive.
Its domed caverns are dark and ruinous. Collapsed floors and fallen buildings have reduced many areas to waste zones of rubble and debris. Poisonous effluvia, toxic dust, and the filth of the hive seep downwards and bury everything in a thick layer of detritus.
It sounds like a night out in... Into this setting, you, the players, form a gang for shenanigans and such. And in the base game, you'll be picking from one of the houses of Hive Primus: Orlock, Goliath, Escher, Vansar, Dalak, Cawdor. The first gang I painted was Orlock. The sourcebook from 1995 summarises some key ideas about House Orlock. Orlocks are otherwise known as the House of Iron, since their foundations lie upon deep ferrous slag pits, which they mine to fuel their industries. Extensive mining has led to the collapse of the lower domes, as well as earthquakes, and even the destruction of several overlying domes. If the Orlocks have a prime rival, it's the Dalak. Historically, Dalak had fulfilled a deal known as the Yulanti contract, Yulanti being one of the noble houses of Hive Primus. But Orlocks ended that agreement when they bribed Underhive gang raiders to destroy fuel lines to a Dalak factory. Since then, and for centuries, Orlocks have fulfilled the lucrative Yulanti contract. However, Dalak have never forgotten this treachery, and both gangs take every opportunity to discredit each other. Lord Hagen Orlock, for instance, was assassinated by the Dalaks, and tensions since have never been greater. When you first start playing Necromunda, you may notice that each gang is basically the same, and you would be right. There is no distinction between starting stats for fighters, no matter which house you choose. The difference comes when you play multiple games, and your fighters gain experience. Gain enough experience, and you can make an advance roll. And with this roll comes the chance for a characteristic to increase by 1, such as toughness or weapon skill for instance. There's also a chance to gain a new skill, and this is where gangs differ. Each gang has a unique skill table, and different fighters have access to different skills. The skills available are agility, combat, ferocity, muscle, shooting, stealth, and technology. Orlocks have access to all of these, but their most common are combat, ferocity, and shooting. For comparison, Escher's most common skill is agility, while Vansar's is technology and shooting. I'm not going to list all skills here, but a few stand out to me, such as rapid fire for shooting, which allows a fighter to fire twice with a named weapon if they don't move. Or there's Nerves of Steel in ferocity, which allows them to re-roll failed pin tests. Or Parry in combat, which allows a fighter to parry even if they don't have a sword, or parry twice if they do have a sword. When gaining stats, fighters can never exceed these characteristics, no matter how long the campaign is. The human frame has limitations after all, but for context, these stats exceed a Space Marine Terminator, which just goes to show how effective sparring in the Underhive can be. Or maybe these stats aren't comparative with actual 2nd edition 40k, but never mind. Of course, different types of fighters start with different stats. Let's use the Ganger stat line as the baseline, since they are the bread and butter of Underhive gangs. The astute of you may notice that this is the same as an Imperial Guardsman. They can take basic weapons, pistols, hand-to-hand weapons, and grenades. Heavies have the same profile, but get access to special and heavy weapons. These are the technical specialists of the gang after all. Gang leaders have an improved stat line with higher weapon skill, ballistic skill, initiative, and leadership. They also get access to special weapons. Gang leaders, being more experienced fighters, may always test to avoid being pinned in place. Also, any fighter within 6 inches of the leader may use the leader's leadership characteristic when taking any leadership test, as long as the leader isn't broken or down. Finally, there are Juves, youthful upstarts, who can only take pistols, hand-to-hand weapons, and grenades. They sport a diminished profile to represent their lack of experience. Specifically, they have a poorer weapon skill, ballistic skill, and leadership, since they can't fight as well as gangers, and tend to poop their pants more often when it's crunch time. With all the main colours blocked in, here's a work in progress shot. The next priority is the highlights, and we'll start with the cloth, the raised area being painted with Vallejo dark sand. For the black areas, I paint all but the recesses with a mixture of black and Citadel Thunderhawk blue. Following that, all the sharp edges of the gun are highlighted with Citadel Fenrisian grey, and the edges of the jacket also get this treatment. While the boots don't have any sharp edges, the areas I imagine would catch the most light are painted with a line of this grey also. I decided I wanted his hair to be darker, so I painted it black with a little white mixed in. And then it was time to highlight the skin, which was first done just painting barbarian flesh over all the raised areas, This was to bring back the colour which was darkened by the wash before. Then I mixed together some barbarian flesh and white, and I used this to highlight the knuckles, nose, cheekbones, as well as any other areas liable to catch the most light. I use a similar principle to highlight his trousers, namely, the majority of the flat areas are painted with a mix of flat blue and a touch of white, while the raised parts of the fold are painted with a shade of blue much closer to white. The areas that would catch the most light get a mix of 50-50 white and flat blue, and painted in a series of thin lines perpendicular to the direction of the leg. The edges of the flat top haircut are picked out with Fenrisian grey. Oh, and I forgot to mention earlier that his sideburns were painted with a mix of tan earth and black, and these are also highlighted with grey. I chose to paint his lips and his eyes off camera. I apologise for not showing this, but I feel painting such details is nerve-wracking enough without a camera being involved as well. Also off camera, I painted his 5 o'clock shadow stubble with a glaze of grey. Some Agrax Earthshade wash is thrown over the knife and the other metallic parts. And when that's dry, I paint the edges of the blade with Fenrisian grey. He's almost done. I just need to paint the base. I know this will divide some of you, but I can deal with that. I paint the base with a thin Thunderhawk blue. I'm aiming for concrete, but grey bases are just too dull for me. Paint them goblin green like in 1995, I hear some of you say. I admit, I was really tempted with this, but I wanted to try something I don't normally do, so here we are. Don't worry about how I base my models, please. When the blue is dry, I tap on some Fenrisian grey with the tip of my brush, and finally, I paint the rim black. And that is how I painted my childhood Orlock gang version 2. 8 beautifully sculpted metal miniatures, clad in leather and jeans, ready to rock the Underhive. Now if you wanted to use the gang creation rules from 1st edition Necromunda to make this a legitimate campaign gang, it would go as follows. Players have 1,000 credits to spend on fighters and weapons. My leader costs 120 credits, the bolt gun 35, his holstered las pistol 15, and his axe 15. Of course, on the model it looks like a power axe, which is only purchasable later in the campaign. So I can call it a normal axe, I guess, unless I'm playing a particularly strict opponent, in which case I'm finding another model. Anyway, he comes to 185 credits. The heavy costs 60 credits, his heavy stubber 120, and his stub gun 10, so that's 190 credits. Each ganger is 50 credits, one has an auto gun 20 credits, and a stub gun, so that comes to 80 credits. Another has a las gun 25 credits, and a las pistol, so he costs 90. The next has an auto pistol and knife. Knives are free, so he only costs 65. I suppose it's a big knife, so it could be a sword, which would be 10 credits extra. The last ganger has a shotgun, so he's 70 credits. I could give him extra types of ammo such as man-stopper shells, but I'm not going to do that for now. Each Juve costs 25 credits. One has a stub gun, so he's 35 in total, and another has an auto pistol, so he's 40 credits. I haven't added any grenades, but if I did want to, I can buy frag and crack grenades which cost 30 and 50 credits respectively. By the way, that isn't the cost per grenade, but the cost for a supply of these for the rest of the campaign for that particular model. They carry enough for each battle with them, but if required to make an ammo roll, it is automatically failed, which means they have run out of grenades for that battle, but they are still equipped with grenades for the campaign, so they can use them again in the next mission. So that brings my gang to 755 credits. The remaining 245 credits is the gang's stash, which I can spend in the trading post at a later date. I will admit, I'm not too experienced doing this, so do let me know politely if I got anything wrong in the comments. And what do you think I should do with my stash? Hold on to it? Buy more equipment? Buy more gang members? Again, let me know in the comments. I realise my fighters need names. Rest assured, I'm working on those. So I hope you enjoyed this initial entry into the world of old Necromunda. I do plan on making more videos. At the time of writing, I am still painting the heavy bolter guy, but I'm sure he will be finished soon and get his place in the spotlight on Instagram. I also have some Goliaths I've been working on. They, of course, will get their own video as well. If you want to follow along with my hobby progression, then do keep an eye on my Instagram. Now, it wouldn't be a Miniscape video if we didn't have a song at the end, and I know some of you really don't like them, so feel free to bug out now. As for everyone else, ready? 2, 3, 4. When I was young, my daddy told me a valuable lesson you will see, to keep you right in the underhive, so your gang can duly thrive. Never mess with an Orlock, 'cause if you do, you'll get a shock. Don't be deceived by the denim jeans, or it's your pants that'll need a clean. Ho, lad, don't cross an Orlock, you'll get a thwack with his rifle stock. If you dare to mock his local block, or steal his sock, or eat his hock. Okay, now, say it after me. What don't you do?
Cross an Orlock.
'Cause what will you get?
Get a shock.
And what will he do?
Use his stock.
And pray what else?
Clock your block.
And never, never, never,
Steal his sock.
and definitely don't.
Eat his hock.
So in conclusion, what have we learned?
Never, 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 never cross an Orlock.
Yeah! And with that, I had better paint some more minis. Take care, and thanks for watching.